T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome, everybody, to the Midheaven Podcast, where we assess, right? We assess the stars for you.
Interpret, translate.
Talk shit and drink alcohol on the internet.
Jovially, yes.
Welcome back.
Favorite astrology podcast that is not the astrology podcast.
No, but it's close. Hopefully it's a close second at some point. We're getting there at some point soon.
Shout out to the astrology podcast.
There you go.
Shout out to our wonderful producer.
Thank you. You guys don't see him, but we are a three-man team.
Oh, yes.
It takes
That was a 3 of Cups you just saw there.
3 of Cups.
Tarot. Yes.
Well, we're super stoked. We're back to talk to you guys about the astrological new year, Aries season. Obviously, Mike wanted a smoked bourbon. How appropriate for Aries season.
Best decision ever.
My husband's like, do you want a beer? He's like, I'll take a whiskey, thanks.
I've been spoiled. Like, you just can't go back. once you go forward, that's what it is. Shout out to the astrology podcast. If you would like these astrologers to feature on your podcast,
Can you imagine?
It'd be an honor. We would love that. You know what I'm saying?
Although Chris Brennan and I feel like we could definitely go head to head because I know he has a Scorpio stellium.
Oh, okay. I don't know his sun and moon though.
He has a Scorpio stellium from what I understand. I think he's a Cap rising.
Oh,
I think. Don't quote me on that. But something about when...
He's a goat?
Somebody talking about like when Saturn crossed his ascendant or when he had a really prominent Saturn transit, he lost all his hair.
Interesting.
Yeah, but Chris Brennan is just like... I don't know. He's like fucking Michael Jordan of astrology.
Really?
Yeah. Like him and like Demetra George. I mean, he practices Hellenistic, obviously, but just his, just his commitment and everything.
Awesome.
It's very... admirable, but I can always spot a Scorpio stellium across the room or a mile away.
Pure dedication. I've heard of them, but everything I've heard of them has been really positive.
I'm really loving. I've been watching. I think they're on like at least year 3 of the astrology podcast. They've been doing it for a while, and what I love is like just the fact that they have different astrologers on there, and at least the last year or so, there's been a lot more content coming on where they're promoting other things. Like Richard Tarnas has been on there recently for promoting Changing of the Gods, and then. Yeah, they always have somebody on there. So that's what's really cool is that they feature other people. But I just love hearing the panel.
How old are they?
I don't know. I feel like
Pluto Libra.
I think Chris Brennan is at least in his mid-30s. I'm not sure.
So he might be early.
At
Pluto
least
Scorpio.
I think he might be Pluto and Libra. I haven't seen his chart, but between him and like they have that other girl. Forgive me, I don't remember her name. They have another woman on there, and then another guy, but sometimes they'll kind of circulate through, and sometimes it'll be Chris talking to people, and other times it'll be them. But one of my favorite things actually about the astrology podcast is their visuals are killer. I actually saw, I can't remember what the company is called. I want to say it's like something collective or Honeycomb Collective or something, but they actually create, not sponsored, but they create astrological calendars, so you can actually have like a astrological calendar for your own natal chart that has all like the zodiacal releasings, and it lets you know all the important transits per your horoscope. So it's great, and it's affordable. It's less than $100. You get this basically this calendar.
Personalized calendar.
Yeah, for the year. Actually,
awesome.
Can you hand that to me? It's the big spiral one, the larger spiral that's on my desk. That one.
Coming for you.
Super awesome. I think they actually sponsor the Astrology podcast, or they at least have some kind of something in there. Honeycomb Collective. So this is mine for January through December.
Personal to you.
Yeah, it's personal to me.
That's
and it'll give you like this year's and next year's solar return. It has all the new and the full moons. It gives you all the transits.
That's crazy. You got that for less than $100?
And it's really nice. It has all kinds of spots for like notes. And I find that I'm so busy throughout the year planning astrological content and looking at the transits for my videos that I'm not always so great knowing what's going on with my stuff. Obviously, I'm in a Mercury annual perfection year, so can you tell I'm trying to get organized? But this has been awesome. But I love their year ahead. So if you guys aren't aware, the astrology podcast actually does like a year ahead where it's like 3 hours long where they break down the astrology for the upcoming year. They also have like a sub podcast that's all about election astrology. So you have to subscribe to that, but they'll give you like the best election dates for each month. So if you're looking for the best date to launch something,
holy shit,
they're phenomenal. They're really great stuff. Big fan.
That's awesome.
I don't know how we got on that topic. How did we get on that topic?
Well, we mentioned how we're basically the Pluto Scorpio astrology podcast. So
yeah,
or the next cycle.
I feel like we like fit in nicely because there's like the Pluto in Virgo and Pluto in Libra people who are very sophisticated. And then there's the Pluto in Sag.
Of an old world. I'm sorry, they're the wisdom of the older generation.
Some of my astrology parents are all like, 65 plus, so that's not abnormal for me. But we're finding our own little like slice in between like that.
You were just about to say Pluto Sag.
Between us and Pluto Sag. Pluto Sag, I think they just want to watch the world burn.
They do. And I'm rooting for them. I'm like, yay, burn it up, burn it up. In a good way,
They just want to watch the world burn, which is totally fine. So I feel like the Pluto and Scorpio generation is definitely kind of like really coming into their power right now with those Saturn squares and the Uranus oppositions. It's been like fucking brutal.
What do you feel about this? So I figured that the coming of age is determined by Saturn, but activated by relatively now, because this could change, Pluto. So like Pluto Capricorn broke into Pluto Libras, and Pluto Aqua is gonna break us in, and we're gonna have the most intense because it's fixed.
It's fixed.
It's like,
I was talking about that a lot today. I was filming something earlier today for my channel.
Debt, war, end of the world. It's just not fair.
The Pluto squares are more challenging for the fixed signs, obviously.
Especially the Saturn and Aquas. Good luck.
But, the Pluto and Libra people are initiating a lot of things for us. So we have to take that in mind, true. That they're actually going to be initiating that. So well on you guys.
That's very true. Oh, yeah.
And I'm trying to remain optimistic. When I think about like anxiety and astrology, or as what's his name from Nightlight Astrology, Chuta Baba or Adam Ellenboss, he says, what does he call it? Sacred anxiety. Like whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. Like I can't find myself all wound up, stressed out about what's gonna happen. I just have to know that you just have to roll with the punches, and like whatever is gonna be is gonna be. Especially with some of the transits right now.
And well, see, I feel like that's what makes Aries season iconic, because you have 2022 Aries season and 2023 Aries season. So 2022 Aries season, I feel like, is end game, but 2023 is like phase 4 Marvel. And without using a Marvel analogy, it's weird to do this Aries season while Jupiter is going to be in Pisces, because in Taurus season is going to be our Aries season. So it's just, we're still going to have the new moon, but like we're closing out a whole 12-year cycle as we start a new year. Yeah. And it's going to, all the Aries season is going to have Jupiter in the last part of Pisces. It's just already legendary. You also have to keep in mind, this is 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025. It's the last 4 years of a Neptune 12th house to an Aries sun. Because post that, we're going to have Neptune in Aries.
Yeah, and Saturn, actually. Neptune and Saturn are going to be ingressing right around the same time. I know there's going to be a little bit of a dance, but...
Awesome, but dangerous.
I guess where this Aries season is different, I guess two things is like, we're going to see eventually that Mars will move into Aries later in the spring, and Jupiter as well. So it's almost like this is the precursor setting the stage for where we're actually going. And we're going to find that the more that we get into 2022, especially like May, June, you're going to feel like things are really ramping up and like we're seeing physical manifestational change. But this day, as soon as we start the spring equinox, so welcome to Aries season, sun moves into Aries, it's almost like that Scorpio moon fucking kicks the door in and goes, hi, I'm here. It's a lot of Aries energy. It's a lot of Mars energy, excuse me. So having the moon in Aries, the moon in Scorpio, the sun in Aries is like, it's kicking, signature. It's just kicking the door in, basically.
Question for you. We started Pisces season off, 0 Pisces, 0 Libra.
Right.
So what do you feel about, what do you feel about that manifestation of the next quincunx.
I feel like Libra to Pisces is dissolving the boundaries that separate us.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
And Aries to Scorpio is, are we fighting our own battles or are we defending ourselves together? I have that quincunx. So I'm a Scorpio sun and I have an Aries moon. And I have found that it's either full out war all the time, or it's like, okay, we're fighting for the same cause. So I guess similar, different. The sun is exalted in Aries, so I think
exactly. And the moon is in its fall in Scorpio, so it's like probably feeling the worst, but seeing that.
And Aries season is so important because we have to look at Mars, right? So you look at Mars that's still in conjunction to the moon. Within 48 hours of the start of Aries season, we're going to see the moon move into a square with both Mars and Venus, right? So that's pretty fucking prominent. Not to mention the fact that then there's a T-square the second day of Aries season where the moon opposes Uranus. It's going to square Saturn. It's going to square Mars. It's going to square Venus. This is wild.
It really is, especially because it's going to fall off the moon in Sag. Like, we're starting Aries season off with moon Sag, moon Scorpio, transforming, clearing away all that Pisces energy, and then boom, we're riding at dawn with the gang. And like, by this time, like, in the sign ruled by the god of war, I hope you know, Russia, like, we're going to have war in the European theater of World War III. Like, let's just stop pussyfooting. And just like, by this time, we're out the fog of Pisces. It's clear. And it's no longer necessarily in a vague economic or technological way. Like, this is the charge. Like, everything that's happening now is getting ready for the cardinal direction of this. So I'm very excited. But I think one thing we have to really accept wholeheartedly is 2022 is a transition year. This is the transition of Jupiter out of Pisces to get ready for a new Jupiter cycle that's going to conclude Saturn in Pisces. So Aries season is going to be the beginning of the end before we step into Pluto Aqua, the beginning of the end. And it's going to actually feel like that. Remember when we had that 1 degree Aries in the Boston Marathon? Yeah. Bombings happen. I feel like something similar is going to occur.
Well, you don't want to fuck around with 0 degrees of the cardinal signs, especially 0 degrees of Aries. That can be just the most pure Aries energy ever. So that's why I was a little taken back by seeing both the moon and the sun at that 0 degrees. I feel like, remember kids, this is the start of the spring equinox. So it's really saying this energy is going to, that imprint of that energy, I'll go back, is basically what we're working with until we get to the summer solstice. So until the sun ingresses into 0 degrees of Cancer, this is an imprint of that energy. So if we've got Mars and Venus conjunct, interesting, it's really highlighting that North Node, South Node. But at the same time, we also see that Mars is building into a square with the nodes and that Mars is in a square to the moon. The moon is the collective. Yeah. So moon and Scorpio being in the fall, detriment, whatever.
I don't want to, I'll apologize. I don't want to put the impression that moon and Scorpio means you'll feel the worst. It doesn't have to mean that. But
no, that's pretty, I think I think you're right on the money because right after, and with equinoxes in general or solstices, the energy is pure. Okay, right, this is a brand new start. So this is the beginning of the astrological new year.
Pure beginning. Literally.
So this would be like January, but for astrologers. So it's like, this is a great time to basically be like, that's it. I'm not going to fuck around anymore. I'm not going to continue to be afraid of this. I'm going to clear this. I'm going to detox this because the next day, the moon starts coming into conjunction, really within 48 hours, to the South Node. And then it's trining, and you're going to see the release of all the tension to Jupiter, Mercury, and also Neptune. So it's kind of like, it doesn't make sense to me that in theory, this is when we're starting something new, but a lot of stuff is still clearing out.
That's exactly like,
right?
That's what makes it really weird.
There's a lot of false flags this year. January started like this. This is going to start like this.
But that's the main thing that, if you borrow to what I was saying in the beginning, that's the main thing I wanted to illustrate. It's like we're clearing so much while starting this new beginning. It's like starting a new cycle while watching everything end around you. It's like this Aries season is going to be the last season of a season series you watched as a kid. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is the last season of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and now they've rebooted Bel-Air. So like, and Carlton's sniffing crack, cocaine. Carlton's sniffing coke, and it's like, that's not what I remember in the original. Like, this is the new cycle. It's just like out of proportion. So I kind of want to give you a real context for this. I didn't even know the moon was going to be in Scorpio. So moon in Scorpio, sun in Aries is the transformation of character relative to how you feel what other people extremely feel about you. And you're divorcing yourself from that. You're in the revolution of individual, coming back to fundamentals. But outside of that, I'm going to be a fat, lazy slob all of Pisces season. And it wasn't until Aries season, and I'm like, new year, new me. I'm going to stop jacking off my dick every day and smoking weed every day and being just a complete invalid. And I'm going to get back on my work. I'm going to literally transform my whole life. So to see that that's coinciding with my decision to do that beginning of Aries season transformation, I like to think that everybody is in some sense ending something and starting something new, which is exciting, terrifying, but exciting.
But to some extent, it's still kind of bullshit, because even in Aries season,
it's like a false start.
We're going to see sextiles to Mars and Venus for sure, right? We're also going to see sextiles to Saturn, which is amazing. But look at all those planets in Aquarius. Mars is in Aquarius. So if the sun is in Aries, we have to look at Mars. Mars is in Aquarius. It's in a conjunction to Venus, and it's getting closer. It's inching closer to Saturn. So it's like, perhaps maybe the equinox in Aries season is what incentivizes people and makes people realize that they have to band together, because shortly after, in the midst of these transits, we're also going to see planets square the nodes. Saturn, Venus, Mars, they'll all square the nodes. So that's important. That's getting a little ahead of myself, but that's really important.
It's important though, because if you think about 2020, where that was like the beginning, the cardinal action where people realized, oh shit, we need to come together. You know, if you think like a Canada and Australia, versus now it's like the conclusion of that. Like it was through 2021 Aquarius we saw more reports of people coming together.
Right.
So I feel like we're going to see the results of that.
Right.
And because you know, it's something to see and read on the news about, oh, there were protests. What are the results of that? We're going to see all that.
Oh man, happen. There's going to be so many protests in April and May. I mean, they're going to try to shut it down, but there's going to be a lot of it.
Because it hasn't been broadcasted, but they've only been building. They haven't gotten more silent. And this applies for everything. I mean, protests for and against the same thing. I think we're going to see another wave of what happened and sparked 2020 come back 2022 that died down 2021. So
I'm super curious about March 27th. Sun is at 6 degrees of Aries. Mercury had just moved into Aries. The moon, Mars, and Venus are all going to be conjunct in Aquarius on the 27th and the 28th of March. And this is going to be an important time to watch because we are in a very Mars kind of period because it's Aries season. But when the moon comes into conjunction with Mars and Venus and Saturn, I think the 27th and the 28th of March are going to be important days, because now we're kind of starting to cook with gas. Those planets are making sextiles to Chiron and slight sextiles to the sun. Mercury and the sun are conjunct in Aries, so there's a lot of speaking out, sharing, being courageous, being independent. And that's probably, you know, I think it's going to be really important. It's leading into the new moon, which ultimately will then be happening later in the day on March 31st. So let's look at that.
Right. Plus that new moon in Aries is going to be explosive. Boom.
And it's at 12 degrees.
Yeah. Right?
No, 11 degrees. I take that back. It'll be 11 degrees. Conjunct Mercury and Chiron. And thankfully, you know, it's in a sextile to Mars, but the next aspect Mars is going to make is the conjunction to Saturn. So
that's like slipping a key into an ignition and activating something forever.
yeah, whatever is happening is really starting to take shape, I think, closer to the end of March, beginning of April. And a new moon in Aries is great for, like, you know, focusing on passion, desires, new beginnings, things that relate to being more independent. I'm not wild about the fact that Mars is in some very difficult aspects, both Mars square the nodes and Mars conjunct Saturn. The only saving grace is that Mars is going to be in a sextile to the new moon and also to Chiron.
Mars in Capricorn, to me, looks like marshaling of forces, preparation. So by the time we have a square conjunct Saturn, it's like a decisive action towards unexpected
I've
strikes.
said this flat out on my channel, and I'll say it here. I believe the Mars-Pluto-Venus conjunction that's happening in Capricorn at the beginning of March. As we film this, it's the end of February, by the way. But I believe that's about military mobilization, police task force mobilization, all kinds of things, because they're aware that people are going to start rioting.
Yep.
And that there's going to be a lot of social unrest. And when we have this new moon with the Mercury, Sun, Moon, Chiron, it's going to be the pain of feeling like we cannot speak out as individuals and we do not have personal freedom.
No, because it's literally at the whim of what these leaders decide. So you just tipped off to me, like, going to war before, hundreds of years ago, where you didn't need popular opinion, versus now, we're having to be paced by headlines. We're having to literally be predictively programmed. Hey, this is how to perceive the conflicts going on. And
Right.
I think what's going to happen is a revolution where people bypass the news to be their own news system and call people in these places. And kind of, it's happening with social media, but we may see the next level here because Jupiter expands everything it's a part of, to where there's more official channels like Project Veritas, where we see, because the mainstream news outlets still serve a purpose. It's still very important.
For now. Eventually it's going to be more.
And that was more important.
Yeah.
Like, it's not permanent. For now they do. But we're going to see how they stand against independent news sources. And this is where that contracts will show who's really telling the truth.
Well, and that's what's going to
really
be so interesting, right? Because the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, the Saturn-Mars conjunction is 12 signs from Pisces.
Right, exactly.
So something is trying to be locked down in terms of the media narrative and, like, what's actually getting out there. You guys want to look at where this new moon in Aries is in your chart, and that is actually part of the key to unlocking some of the frustration in your Aquarius transits. So, you know, I saw this post, I posted it, I don't know if you saw it, but it was like basically saying, like, where Aquarius and Taurus are in your chart right now is where you cannot be willing to be lowballed.
I saw that.
You can't sell yourself short.
That's so true.
So it's almost like those are the two areas of your chart where you're really going to get super strong and fixated and be very inflexible.
I want to touch on the lockdown you said, because that the 12th house nature to that.
Yeah.
Because that, I think, is super pressing. Mercury is out of there, but like with Juno, it's this commitment to enforce laws that 12th house to Neptune won't be broadcasted, won't be shared, you're not going to hear about, and it's just pure suppression.
We may may see a significant suppression of information and facts, especially globally, of the masses. Like, they're not gonna want to show people protesting. Let me put it out there like that. You're not gonna see that. They're not gonna want to be putting that on the news. They're gonna want to maintain a narrative. They're gonna limit that, and they're gonna want to limit people who are trying to organize, right? But I think the positive side is, with that limitation and the sextiles to Aries, it's going to send a lot of people out there with their cell phones, and they're going to start documenting what's going on. So then it's going to go from, okay, they're suppressing the masses. What are individuals doing to be able to stand up?
A stark contrast between what's being reported collectively versus what individuals are reporting.
Well, we're already starting to see a little bit of this now, right? You start to kind of see what they're posting versus, like, the actual stuff that's going on in the street in Canada.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, barring on what she said, as you're already starting to see it, this is the progression and climax of a cycle. And we're going to see this cycle climax here. And That's what I love about this energy. It's so impressive. Like the Dred Scott decision. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you think about how African Americans in this country were seen in their legal status versus now that you're seeing it with unvaccinated people, and I don't want to make this like vaccinated versus unvaccinated, but just to show a parameter of how this is playing out, the duality of Pisces, where the shadow of Pisces is that division versus unity.
Right.
There's so much stuff that's happening now that it's gonna take like a couple years to process because it's just still so novel.
Some pretty gnarly stuff that's going to happen at the end of March, beginning of April. Just the fact that Saturn and Mars are going to come into conjunction, and we're also seeing it square the nodes, is something I've been thinking about a lot of. Is like peaceful protest is something that we need.
Yeah.
We need that. Otherwise, this is going to be traps, basically, for organizers and people who are trying to protest
because it can get ugly
shut
real
down.
Quick.
Yeah,
it get ugly real quick.
Yeah, but I also think of like Aquarius being like unions and networks.
Yeah.
And being that Saturn traditionally rules either political parties, governments, leaders, right, bosses, whatever, superiors in general. I have thought for a very long time that part of what was going to happen in the spring of 2022 was going to be lots of police officers and task force or military people being given orders, realizing that what they're being told to do is a violation of human rights.
Yeah.
And potential more police brutality, especially when we see people who are going to be protesting. So my concern is, okay, you've got a lot of people who are going to be very passionate. They want to go out there. They want to say something, especially when they're realizing that they're being shut down and they're not able to actually share online or within media. So they're going to want to take to the streets, and then you're going to see more cop and police brutality and them trying to shut things down. Like they're going to possibly use, kind of like what they did in Canada, martial law to prevent people organizing.
Everything that Candace just said verbatim is the North Node in Taurus, which is now, because a lot of everything up until now were ideas being circulated.
Right.
In community, in social media. Now people know what they think. In Taurus, it's real on the streets. Square Saturn in Aquarius.
Yeah.
It's going to come to a head.
They're trying to prevent people from coming together physically, right? Uranus and Taurus is going to be masses of people coming together eventually, May, June, July.
Masses.
So I think it would benefit protesters and supporters to really hear me on this. Be careful what you're sharing on social media, okay? Long gone are the days where you can post, okay, this is where we're meeting, this is where we're protesting. It's not safe anymore. You can't do that. I also question whether or not it's safe for you to be, texting about this stuff or talking about it on certain platforms. Like, this is like a real thing. And eventually the only safe way to go is going to be physically meeting in person and doing demonstrations in person and having meetings in person. Eventually, I think we will move to that because we're going to see that social media and also the internet is going to be so heavily censored that there's no other way other than to start kind of connecting and doing that in real life.
Yep. Which once again has been happening too, because you have people meeting up for real. But this is where it starts to be more cohesive. This is where there's much more of a Jupiter evolution of more people coming out for real. Because a lot of people didn't know who or what to trust. But now we've seen what has lasted the test of time. And personally, too, the exposing, because what was really difficult with the exposure of the truth, it's labeled a conspiracy theory.
Right.
We're going to see the tide shift to where they can't be labeled it. Because now everything that was labeled a theory is true. It's all coming together.
Yeah.
And it's going to push forward a brand new paradigm.
Well, and it's also just what can individuals do? Aries is individuals. What can individuals do to be able to better support the masses?
DIYs or what you call it? Yeah.
Especially if you're seeing situations where you've got, people who are being beaten up by police officers in the street. You're seeing people who are being harassed and people who are being limited and their rights being taken away. It's like, I think we're going to see a lot of people stand up and people who are more willing to jump in and get involved or film it to be able to show proof and documentation of what's going on. Especially because, Mercury's combust. It's conjunct in this new moon. So it's very close to the sun. So it's going to be a lot of like what people stand up and feel like they need to say, or like what's their own personal morals or integrity. Integrity is such a big thing. So I think people need to realize that, yeah, we can come together in masses, but we want to really be careful for not setting ourselves up for situations at the end of March and early April to be gathering and being set up to have more of our freedoms actually taken away, right? Because I think that's ultimately what's going to happen, especially I'm most concerned.
Tell me what you think about this, though. Because of that 12th house nature, do you think it's going to be more subtle? Like freedoms being taken away to where people ask for it, or like it's not?
No, it's not going to be subtle. It's not going to be subtle at all. I think
it's going to be like in your face direct.
I think especially the beginning of April, if you look at the Mars-Saturn conjunction, Mars and Saturn conjunct at 22 degrees of Aquarius, it squares the nodes in fixed signs.
Sextile, semi-sextile Jupiter.
Yeah, so something's happening the 4th, 5th of April as the moon ingresses into Gemini and it trines. It's actually, we're going to get that information out there. I think most of the uprising and the riots, and also I think of like Mars, Saturn, and Aquarius, 11th house from the sun in Aries, is there is massive clearing going on in politics and government. And Mars Saturn can literally materialize as, you know, a war within parties, a war within governments, a war with the internet, a war with the masses. Just the Mars Saturn conjunction during Aries season is enough, but the fact that it squares the nodes really is going to reinforce the fact that we have to take swift, serious action wherever Aquarius is in our chart. And it's going to be sextiling, you know, the sun and Mercury slightly.
Lots of community movement. I see what you mean. Yeah, all that alcohol energy.
But I actually get the impression that it won't really be until Mars comes into conjunction with Neptune that we're actually possibly going to be thrown back into, you know, isolation, separation again. The events that take place with the Mars-Saturn in a way will materialize as certain powers at bay being like, well, because this happened, now we're taking this away, and now we do have martial law, or now we are controlling the narrative, or you can't have access to this media. Things are going to get really weird.
And this is where I feel like if we had Virgo opposite, there'd be like,
there is
bullshit.
Shit in Virgo.
Bullshit. Here are the facts. But there's nothing there. So it's like people can make up any reason and, well, that's it. So, and here's the unpredictable element around everything. Because and so ideologically, revolutions do not need to involve bloodshed. But statistically, every significant revolution we've seen in this world involved bloodshed. Heads rolling, guillotines, like wars. So at any point that can happen. Like there's no timeline for that. It's a potential. So that's like the white noise that can really erupt. And it's a transit like this that's going to really prepare for this, because we're coming out of Revolutionary War energy into Civil War energy. And before President Trump is 47 again and Civil War breaks out in his term, you know, that could be wishful thinking. But it's definitely, you know, this talk of politics and seeing so many more people get disenchanted by that. The seeds to a third party revolution are already happening before you even hear of a third party, before you.
I'm hoping for a third party. I'm hoping for a whole new system altogether, to be honest with you, because
yay for president.
We either need a new branch or we need a whole new party, and
we need a whole new system.
So think about this, right? Because Aquarius is naturally rebellious.
Right.
Right? But all this Pisces energy wants peace. So I keep talking about this. This keeps coming up for me in meditation. It's like being somebody who's protesting for peace, being a rebel for peace, being a rebel for change. This is a huge theme. We have such contradicting energies. The Mars-Saturn stuff is super fucking heavy, especially being in Aquarius and in a square to the nodes. But then you've got Jupiter and Neptune that's like, okay, but it's all dissolving. You know, let them fight it out. Let's get it out of their system before we're able to bring peace in. I'm hoping that it's peaceful protesting. I'm anticipating and hoping that it's also going to be like a second wave of what we saw in the 1960s, where we saw people who were handing out flowers. Remember, this is all in a square to the North Node. right?
Yeah.
So it's about being able to bring people together and experience more embodiment and love and security and stability.
But what I love about you referencing the 60s, all the outer planets were in the social signs. They were opposite.
Yeah.
And now it's back towards the individual, which is
Yeah.
more selfish, which is more end of the world. So like, it's going to be the opposite. It's not going to be flowers.
It's not going to be unifying as much as it
It's
could
going to be
or
a
should.
purge.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think it's a good thing. It's like things get uglier before they get beautiful, because it's just going to bring so much stuff to a head.
Well, it's like the Tower card. You know,
Right.
I'm hoping that the Mars-Saturn stuff with the square to the nodes is just flat out going into certain areas of government and certain government branches and cleaning house. Really getting rid of people who have done some really fucked up, horrific, even borderline treasonous things. I mean, in traditional astrology, Saturn was the last stop. That was Pluto.
Yeah.
So Mars and Saturn together is not an energy to be fucked with. Right? It's just not.
Decisive actions.
Yeah.
Decisive karmic. And that's the most important thing. 2020 was the last time we had Mars, Saturn, and Aquarius.
Yeah.
So now we're coming back. What did you do in those 2 years? How have you grown it? How are we moving forward? Is the master taking talents from you? Is it giving talents to you? So, I mean, so very pivotal.
Well, so I'm interested, and I have become super fixated on this because I feel like throughout this next year, Leo aspects are going to be so important, and I will take it whenever I can get it.
Yeah,
So until we get to
seriously.
Leo season, and I say this because we have, you know, the nodes in Taurus and Scorpio, lots of transits in Aquarius. It's a T-square, so it's very tense energy that's kind of firing at all cylinders, and it's missing that fourth piece, which would be Leo, which would create a grand fixed square. That really makes the wheel of the chart turn. So lunar transits in Leo, like this full moon we had the last month, and we won't really get it until Leo season later this year, and that's when the jump off happens. The North Node is going to conjunct Uranus. When the moon goes into Leo on April 11th, it's been in Leo, but when it's in Leo, it opposes Mars and Saturn and squares the nodes. You're going to see a grand fixed cross. It's also going to trine the sun. So something's actually happening and releasing that seems very much like conflict, but it's just like, oh, I'm glad that's over type of bullshit on April 11th.
Yeah.
Mars
Coming near the end of Aries, too.
hanging out at 29 degrees of Aquarius, April 13th and 14th. And then Mars moves into Pisces, and we are going to have a full moon that will be in Libra. I think 26 degrees is what it looks like, right? Yeah. 26 degrees of Libra, and that's going to be on April 16th. That one squares Pluto, and at least Venus is exalted in Pisces. So it's almost like things calm down from mid-April on. It's not easy. We still have Saturn square the nodes, but at least we have the moon in a trine to Saturn, right? Which means also we're going to see that the moon is making some positive angles and some positive aspects. Well, I guess just to Saturn, kind of to Mars. But yeah, not much other than that, huh?
Two things.
Sun sextile Saturn, I guess that's nice.
Actually, yeah. That's going to stabilize a lot before Saturn goes into Pisces next year. So I think that's going to be a sleeper blessing. I think two things, the balsamic phase or the Piscean 12th house Mars, Venus, Neptune, Jupiter transit to the sun is at one level going to collectively, because this is exactly as Candace said, you're redefining what it means to be an individual respective to 2010, where you started the brand new journey of being an individual.
Yeah.
You're taking everything you've learned. So it's like you're realizing at one level all the people who you're arguing with and disagree on, because a lot of people are arguing against narratives fed to them. Collectively, people are going to realize none of us know what we're talking about. We're made to argue against this. It's going to be a shadow sense of unity. And the second part is you're getting ready to step into the completion of yourself as an individual. This Aries season, you'll feel more like yourself than ever. But the distinction between this year and next year is this year, you're completing all the lessons you've learned the past 12 years versus next year, you're ready to move forward completed. So I hope you enjoy this Aries season, because a lot of answers will be a lot of questions will be answered with your own actions and responses individually to worldwide collective events affecting everyone. Remember what you've learned. Remember what Hermes and Hades have taught you in the Midheaven podcast. And hopefully this experience lets you realize that you need to join level 3. Level 2 or level 1. Like, that's really what this all means. It's not a cult, right? But like, you want to be a part of, you want to be a level 1, 2, or 3. And that's just going to really, guide you properly.
There's one more thing I want to say. One more thing. The fact that the full moon in Libra quincunxes Jupiter and Neptune, and it's going to be really showing you whether or not relationships are solid or if it's just a facade.
What's quincunxing it?
The moon is going to quincunx Jupiter and Neptune.
Oh, in Leo, okay.
Yeah. No, in Pisces. So the full moon in Libra. As it's wrapping up Aries season, it's going to quincunx.
Okay, the full moon. Right,
so keep in mind, guys, there's going to be like things are going to rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall until about June. So even at the end of Aries season, you guys are going to realize that even though you've been pushing for something to work, if it's not going to work, Aries season is going to wrap up with you just needing to learn to let it go. Right. And as we get into the second half of April, which will be Taurus season, we'll do that at a later date, Mars and Venus are going to be in Pisces. So there's still a lot of collective healing and releasing things. And it's okay if you need to keep working through things. Some of you guys are going to feel like you keep building sandcastles that just keep falling down. And we really have until Mars and Jupiter cross into Aries at the end of May to really make changes and make magic happen. So if you're getting frustrated in Aries season, why is this happening? Why is this breaking down? Why don't I have support? Just stay tuned, stay grounded, realize that we're giving ourselves until the end of May, beginning of June 2022 to really move forward. So be present with some of this stuff. Hopefully you guys are going to be activists for change and for peace, and also just being able to assist and help other people. Be courageous. That's the best advice I can give you.
Whoop.
Okay?
And yeah, be yourself. And be okay with changing the definition of what that is, because you understand who you are more than you ever did. Believe in yourself, and peace.
Peace. We'll see all of you guys very soon. Take care.